Ambassador Kethvorin stood very still on the observation deck. His 4 eyes watched the empty space in front of the council station. Around him, dozens of other aliens waited in silence. They all looked at the same spot in the darkness between the stars. They were waiting for the humans. For 50 years, the Galactic Council had watched Earth from far away. They had sent tiny probe ships to study the strange planet. They had recorded everything: the blue oceans, the green forests, the cities that grew bigger every year, and most importantly, they had watched humanity build its fleet. "They are coming," said High Counselor Yildrax. She was a crystalline, a species made of living glass. Light passed through her body and made rainbow patterns on the floor. Her voice was soft, but everyone heard it clearly. Kethvorin turned his head slightly. He was a Silith, tall and thin with gray skin and 4 arms. His people were known for being calm and wise. But today, even he felt nervous. A bright light appeared in the darkness. Then another. Then 10 more. The lights grew bigger and bigger until they became shapes. Ship shapes. The first vessel came through the fold space. Gate and Kethvorin felt his heart stop for a moment. It was enormous. The ship stretched across space, like a mountain made of metal. It was nearly 4 kilometers long. Weapons covered every surface. Giant cannons pointed in all directions. Armor plates thicker than buildings protected its hull. The name was written on the side in human letters that the translator turned into meaning. Titanic. More ships followed. Each one was just as big, just as powerful. Their names appeared one by one: Bismarck, Yamato, Missouri, Victory. "By the ancient stars," whispered a Corvith general standing nearby. His species looked like large insects with hard shells. They were the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They had conquered 100 worlds. But right now, his voice was shaking. "We knew they were building ships. We did not know they were building ... these." High Counselor Yildrax moved closer to the window. Her crystal body caught the light from the human fleet and scattered it across the room. "These are their diplomatic ships," she said quietly. "Their war fleet is much larger." Nobody spoke after that dot for the next hour. The council members watched the human fleet take position around the station. Each ship moved with perfect control. They worked together like parts of one machine. The aliens had expected humans to be primitive. They had expected mistakes and confusion. They saw neither. Finally, a small shuttle left the main ship and flew toward the station. The diplomatic meeting was about to begin. Kethvorin was chosen to greet the humans at the docking port. He stood with 20 council guards behind him. The guards carried plasma rifles and wore heavy armor. They were the best soldiers from 5 different species. The shuttle door opened with a hiss of air. A human woman stepped out first. She was shorter than Kethvorin expected. Her skin was brown, and her black hair was tied behind her head. She wore a simple gray uniform with colored ribbons on her chest. Her name tag said, Chun Wei, Ambassador. Behind her came 12 more humans, soldiers. They wore armor that looked almost simple compared to the council guards. They carried rifles that seemed small. They had no shields, no force fields, no visible protection technology. Kethvorin felt confused. These were the beings who had built those massive ships? These soft, small creatures? "Ambassador Chun Wei," he said, bowing his head in the traditional greeting. "The Galactic Council welcomes humanity to the stars." The human woman smiled. It was a strange expression. Her teeth showed, but she did not seem angry. Kethvorin had learned that humans did this when they were happy. "Thank you, Ambassador Kethvorin," she said. Her voice was calm and warm. "Earth is honored to finally meet our galactic neighbors." They began walking through the station toward the council chamber. Kethvorin walked beside Ambassador Chun Wei. The human soldiers walked behind them. The council guards walked on the sides. As they moved through the corridors, Kethvorin kept looking at the human soldiers. He could not help it. Something about them bothered him. Something he could not name. They did not look impressive. Their armor was plain. Their weapons were basic. They were smaller than the Corvith, slower than the Silith, weaker than the Vorics. But the way they moved, the way their eyes never stopped scanning the corridor, the way they positioned themselves without speaking, always covering every angle, the way they breathed slowly and steadily, completely relaxed, but somehow completely ready. Kethvorin had met many warriors in his long life. He knew what dangerous beings looked like. And something deep inside him, some ancient instinct, was screaming a warning. These 12 humans scared him more than the entire fleet outside. He shook his head and told himself he was being foolish. They were just soldiers. Regular soldiers, not even special forces. The humans had said so themselves. The group reached the council chamber. The great doors opened, and they stepped inside. 100 alien representatives waited at their seats. They all turned to look at the humans. Ambassador Chun Wei walked to the center of the room. She stood straight and looked around at all the different species. She did not seem afraid. She did not seem impressed. She seemed comfortable. Members of the Galactic Council, she began. Humanity comes to you with open hands and peaceful hearts. We do not seek war. We do not seek conquest. We seek only friendship and cooperation among the stars. Her words were perfect. Her tone was perfect. But Kethvorin noticed something else. While she spoke, her 12 soldiers had spread out around the room. They stood against the walls, quiet and still. They looked bored, almost sleepy, but their hands never moved far from their weapons. Their eyes never stopped moving. And somehow, without anyone noticing, they had positioned themselves so that every single council member was within their line of fire. The council had prepared for the human ships. They had built weapons to fight those giant vessels. They had made plans and strategies. They had not prepared for the humans themselves. As Kethvorin watched Ambassador Chun Wei speak about peace and friendship, he understood something that made his blood run cold. The ships were not the threat. The ships were just boxes. Metal containers. Transportation. The real weapons were standing in this room right now, looking bored and harmless. And the galaxy had just invited them inside. The emergency session was called 3 days after New Helsinki. Every member of the Galactic Council was required to attend. No exceptions. No excuses. This had not happened in 400 years. Kethvorin arrived early and took his seat. The great chamber was already filling with representatives from 100 different species. They talked in low voices. They looked nervous. News of the Vorics' retreat had spread across the galaxy like fire. High Counselor Yildrax stood at the center of the room. Her crystal body was darker than usual. The colors inside her moved slowly, almost sadly. She waited until everyone was seated before she spoke. "Thank you all for coming," she began. Her voice echoed through the silent chamber. "I know many of you have questions about what happened at New Helsinki. I will try to give you answers. But first, I must tell you something important." She paused. Light flickered through her form. We were wrong. The chamber stayed quiet. Everyone waited. For 50 years, we watched humanity from far away. We saw them build their ships, their great Titanic vessels, their fleets of steel and fire. We believed those ships were the threat. We built weapons to fight those ships. We made plans to contain that fleet. She turned slowly, looking at each section of the chamber. We prepared for the wrong enemy. A holographic display came alive behind her. It showed images from New Helsinki. Human soldiers fighting. Human soldiers wounded, but still standing. Human soldiers refusing to fall. 18,000 regular human troops defeated 10 million Variks, Yildrax continued. Not elite forces. Not special warriors. Regular soldiers with standard training and standard weapons. They fought for 19 hours without rest. They took wounds that would kill any of our species. They kept fighting. She changed the display. Now it showed numbers and charts. Statistics that made Kethvorin's stomach hurt. Earth has a standing army of 47 million active soldiers. Another 300 million trained reserves. Every human colony practices combat training. Every adult human knows how to fight. The Corvith admiral who had laughed at Chun Wei stood up. His shell was pale with shock. High Counselor, these numbers ... They must be wrong. They are correct, Yildrax said. We have confirmed them through multiple sources. But that means... The admiral stopped. He could not finish the sentence. Yes, Yildrax said. If Earth ever fully mobilizes for war, they could field an army larger than most of our species' total populations. A Silith delegate raised one of her 4 arms. High Counselor, surely we can match their numbers. The Council represents hundreds of worlds. Billions of citizens. Yildrax's S-light flickered again. Let me show you something. The hologram changed. Now it showed side-by-side comparisons. Alien soldier next to human soldier. The differences were disturbing. Humans can survive in temperature ranges from -60 to +70 degrees. Most Council species can handle a range of perhaps 20 degrees. Humans can function without sleep for 3 days. Some can go longer. Our soldiers need 8 to 12 hours of rest daily. More data appeared. Humans heal from wounds that would permanently disable our species. A human can lose a limb and continue fighting. They can break bones and keep moving. They can bleed heavily and refuse to die. The chamber was completely silent now. Their bodies produce chemicals during combat that reduce pain and increase strength. They call this adrenaline. It makes them faster and stronger when they are afraid. Fear does not weaken humans. It makes them more dangerous. A small alien from a peaceful species raised a shaking tentacle. Why? How can any species be like this? Yildrax turned to face the question. Because Earth is a death world. Kethvorin had heard this term before, but never really understood it. Now, Yildrax explained. Earth has extreme temperatures, violent weather, and hundreds of predator species. Everything on their planet tried to kill them. Diseases, animals, natural disasters. Even other humans. They evolved in an environment of constant danger. They became what they needed to become to survive. She dimmed the main display, but that is not the worst part. The chamber somehow got quieter. The worst part is their psychology. Their minds. A new set of images appeared. Humans helping each other. Humans carrying wounded friends. Humans shielding strangers with their own bodies. Humans form emotional bonds faster and stronger than any species we have encountered. They will die for family. They will die for friends. They will die for complete strangers if they feel a connection. Kethvorin remembered the human soldiers at New Helsinki. Remembered how they had stepped in front of each other. Taken wounds meant for others. Kept fighting not for victory, but for the person next to them. This is why they don't retreat, Yildrax said. This is why they don't surrender. Running away means leaving someone behind. A human would rather die than abandon a companion. The Corvith admiral sat down heavily. His species was the most warlike in the Council. They had conquered 100 worlds. But even they retreated when victory was impossible. Even they valued survival over pride. Humans did not think that way. There is one more thing, Yildrax said. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. something we have agreed never to discuss in public sessions. Everyone leaned forward. If their regular soldiers are this capable, imagine what their elite forces can do. Their special operations units. Their chosen warriors. She paused. We have analyzed what little data we have on these units. The psychological profiles required 17 analysts to be memory wiped afterward. They could not live with what they learned. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. So what do we do? Asked a voice from the back. Keth Voren could not see who spoke. What can we do? Yildrax's crystal form brightened slightly. We do what humans themselves suggested. We become their friends. We work with them. We make sure they never have reason to see us as enemies. And if someone attacks them anyway? The voice asked High Counselor Yildrax was quiet for a long moment. Then we pray, she said finally. We pray for whoever was foolish enough to wake the sleeping giant. Because the humans do not fight to win. They fight until nothing is left standing. They fight until their enemies are dust and memory. She looked around the chamber one last time. They call their great ships Titanic. They name them after vessels from their history. Do you know what happened to the original Titanic? It sank. It was destroyed. Her color shifted to deep red. Humans name their greatest achievements after failures, after tragedies. Because to them, defeat is not an ending. It is a lesson, a reason to come back stronger. She let those words hang in the air. The ships are not the weapon. The ships never were. The ships are just metal and engines. The real weapons are the beings inside them. And we have invited those weapons into our galaxy. The session ended in silence. Every representative left with the same thought burning in their minds. They had been afraid of the wrong thing. And somewhere out there, other empires were about to make a terrible mistake. 6 months passed after humanity joined the Galactic Council. Ships traveled between Earth and the station. Trade agreements were signed. Ambassadors exchanged gifts and promises. Everything seemed peaceful. Then the Vorex came. The Vorex were a nightmare species. They looked like a horrible mix of insects and reptiles. Each one stood 2 meters tall, with hard black shells covering their bodies. They had 4 arms ending in claws that could cut through metal. Their mouths were full of teeth designed for tearing flesh. They did not build cities or create art. They only did one thing. They hunted. For 300 years, the Vorex had attacked the outer colonies. They came in swarms of millions. They ate everything alive. Then they moved on to the next world. No species had ever stopped them. The Council could only evacuate people before the swarms arrived. The colony of New Helsinki was not evacuated in time. 40,000 humans lived on New Helsinki. Farmers, miners, and their families. They had come to build a new life on a distant world. Now 10 million Vorex were falling from the sky toward them. High Counselor Yildrax called an emergency meeting. Her crystal body flickered with stress. We must send help immediately, she said. Every ship we can spare? Ambassador Keth Voren nodded. I agree. How many council vessels can reach New Helsinki in time? 200 ships, answered a corvette admiral, carrying 50,000 soldiers. But even that may not be enough against a swarm this size. The door opened and Ambassador Chun Wei walked in. She had received the same emergency message. Her face was calm, but her eyes were hard. Ambassador Chun Wei, said Yildrax, we are organizing a rescue fleet. How many Earthships can join us? Chun Wei looked at the holographic map showing New Helsinki. She studied the Vorex swarm patterns. She was quiet for a long moment. 1 ship, she said finally. The room went silent. 1 ship? Keth Voren repeated. He thought he had heard wrong. Ambassador, There are 10 million Vorks approaching that colony. Your people will die. I understand the situation, Shen Wei said. Her voice did not change. We are sending the transport vessel Armstrong. It carries the 42nd Infantry Division. How many soldiers is that? Asked the Corvith Admiral. 18,000. The Corvith made a sound like coughing. It was his species' version of bitter laughter. 18,000 against 10 million? Human, I have fought the Vorks. I have seen them tear through armies 10 times that size. Your soldiers will be food. Chun Wei turned to look at him. Something in her eyes made the old warrior step back. Admiral, she said quietly, the 42nd Infantry Division is a regular army unit. Standard training. Standard equipment. They are not our elite forces. They are not our special troops. They are ordinary soldiers. She paused. They will be enough. Nobody believed her. The Council sent their 200 ships anyway. They would arrive 6 hours after the human transport. They expected to find nothing but bodies. Kethvorin requested permission to watch the battle from a Council observation drone. He wanted to understand these humans. He needed to see what they would do. The Armstrong reached New Helsinki just as the first Vorks landed outside the colony walls. The transport dropped through the clouds and opened its doors while still in the air. Human soldiers jumped out, falling hundreds of meters before their grav packs slowed them down. They hit the ground, running. Kethvorin watched through the drone's cameras as 18,000 humans formed lines outside the colony. They dug trenches with incredible speed. They set up weapons and checked their equipment. They moved like they had done this 1,000 times before. The Vorik swarm saw the humans and changed direction. Millions of black shapes flowed across the landscape like a living ocean. The sound of their claws hitting the ground was like thunder. A human officer stood on top of a defensive wall. He raised his hand and waited. The swarm came closer. Half a kilometer. 300 meters. 100 meters. The officer dropped his hand. Every human weapon fired at once. The front line of the Vorik swarm simply disappeared. Bodies exploded. Shells cracked. Black blood sprayed into the air. The humans kept firing. They did not stop. They did not slow down. But the Voriks kept coming. They climbed over their own dead. They ran through the gunfire. They reached the human lines and the real fighting began. Kethvorin had seen many battles. He thought he understood war. He was wrong. The humans fought like nothing he had ever witnessed. When their guns ran out of ammunition, they used them as clubs. When their clubs broke, they used knives. When they lost their knives, they used their hands. A Vorik's warrior slashed a human soldier across the chest. Blood poured from the wound. The soldier should have fallen. Should have died. Instead, he grabbed the Vorik's arm, pulled it close, and pushed a grenade into its mouth. Another human lost her leg to a Vorik's claw. She fell to the ground, pulled out her pistol, and kept shooting until she had no more bullets. Then she threw rocks. Hour after hour, the battle continued. The sun set and rose again. The humans did not retreat. They did not run. When one fell, another stepped forward to take their place. They rotated through their lines, grabbing short moments of rest, eating and drinking without stopping their watch. The Voriks had never faced anything like this. They were predators. They were used to prey that ran or prey that died. These humans did neither. These humans bit back. By the second dawn, something incredible happened. The Voriks began to retreat. Kethvorin watched in disbelief as the swarm pulled back. Millions of alien predators turned away from the colony and ran. They had never done this before. In 300 years of recorded history, the Voriks had never retreated from a battle. Until now. When the Council fleet finally arrived, they found New Helsinki standing, damaged but alive. The human soldiers were treating their wounded, repairing their walls, and preparing for another attack that never came. Cathvorin landed his shuttle near the human command post. He walked through the battlefield in shock. Dead Vorix covered the ground as far as he could see. The smell was terrible. The sight was worse. He found the human commander sitting on a broken piece of wall. The man's armor was cracked and covered in blood, both red and black. His face was tired, but his eyes were still sharp. "Commander," Cathvorin said, How did you do this?" The human looked up at him. He seemed surprised by the question. "We held the line," he said simply. "That's what we do." Cathvorin looked at the battlefield again. He looked at the wounded humans being carried to medical tents. He looked at the soldiers who were already preparing defenses for another fight. These were not special forces, not elite warriors, not super soldiers. These were regular troops. Ordinary humans. And they had broken a Vorix swarm. Cathvorin returned to the council station that night. He did not sleep. He sat in his quarters and wrote a report that would change everything. The subject line was simple. "We have made a terrible mistake. The galaxy had been afraid of the wrong thing." The Rethic Dominion did not believe the stories. They were a warrior empire. They had conquered 30 star systems through blood and fire. Their soldiers were giants, standing 3 meters tall, with thick red skin and 4 powerful arms. They had crushed every enemy they faced. They feared nothing. When news of New Helsinki reached them, their high commander laughed. 18,000 soft creatures beat the Vorix? Impossible. The council is making up stories to scare us. Humans are nothing. Water and bone. I could break one with my smallest hand. High Commander Rethkar sat on his throne of black stone. Around him, the walls were decorated with skulls. Hundreds of them. Each skull came from a species the Rethic had defeated. Each one was a trophy of conquest. He wanted a human skull for his collection. Ambassador Chun Wei came to the Rethic homeworld to discuss peace. She walked into the throne room with only 2 guards. She looked up at the giant warrior and his wall of death, and she did not seem afraid. Rethkar did not like that. "Human," he said, his voice like grinding rocks. "Your species is new to the stars. You do not understand how things work. The strong take what they want. The weak die. This is the law of the universe." Chun Wei nodded politely. "We understand that philosophy, High Commander. We simply disagree with it." The Rethic guards around the room made sounds of anger. No one disagreed with the High Commander. Rethkar leaned forward on his throne. "Your ships are impressive. I admit this. But ships do not win wars. Warriors win wars. And your people?" He waved one of his massive hands. "Your people are soft, small, fragile." "With respect," Chun Wei said, her voice still calm, "I would encourage you not to test that theory." It sounded almost like a threat, almost like a warning. Rethkar laughed again. It was not a pleasant sound. "I will enjoy adding your skull to my wall, Ambassador." The meeting ended. Chun Wei returned to Earth. She sent a report to her government with one recommendation. Prepare for war. The Rethic attacked 3 weeks later. They chose a small colony called Prometheus III. It was a mining world. 40,000 human civilians lived there, digging precious metals from the mountains. The colony had no war fleet, no defensive systems. Just 800 soldiers from the 215th Infantry Company, reservists, part-time warriors, people who worked as miners and farmers during peace and trained as soldiers only on weekends. The Rethic sent 15,000 of their best. Shock troops. They expected the battle to last 1 day. They expected easy victory. They were wrong. Cathvorin learned about the attack from Council intelligence. He immediately contacted the human embassy. "Ambassador, You must send help, he said. 800 soldiers cannot hold against 15,000 Rethic warriors. Your people will be slaughtered. Chun Wei looked at him through the communication screen. Her face was strange. Not angry. Not scared. Almost ... sorry? Reinforcements are on the way, she said. They will arrive in 3 weeks. 3 weeks? Ambassador, the battle will be over in hours. Chun Wei nodded slowly. Yes, it will be. She ended the call. Keth Voren did not understand. The humans were going to let their colony die? It made no sense. Everything he had learned about humans told him they would. Never abandon their own people, unless ... unless. They believe 800 reservists could hold for 3 weeks. The idea was insane, impossible, but Keth Voren remembered New Helsinki. He remembered what he had seen there. He got access to Rethic military communications. If humans were going to try the impossible, he wanted to watch. The first reports from Prometheus 3 came. After 6 hours, the Rethic had landed outside the colony at dawn. They had marched toward the settlement in perfect formation. Their commanders expected the humans to surrender, or to run, or to die quickly. None of those things happened. The 800 humans had spent those 3 weeks preparing. They had dug trenches, built walls, created traps. They had turned the mining colony into a fortress. When the Rethic came, the humans were waiting. The first wave of attackers hit the minefield. Explosions tore through their ranks. Bodies flew into the air. The Rethic kept coming. They reached the outer walls and climbed. Human soldiers met them with rifles and grenades. Close combat began. The Rethic were bigger, stronger. They had 4 arms to the humans. 2. It did not matter. The humans fought with something the Rethic did not understand. They called it desperation. They called it fury. They called it love. Behind those walls were families, children, people they had sworn to protect. The reservists were not professional soldiers. They were teachers and engineers and miners. But today, they were warriors. They would not let anyone through. Days passed. The Rethic brought more troops. They attacked again and again. Each time, they were pushed back. The human casualties grew. 50 dead. 100. 300. But the survivors did not break, did not retreat, did not surrender. Keth Voren intercepted a Rethic communication on the 5th day. The voice was shaking. What is wrong with these creatures? We killed half of them yesterday. We saw them die. But this morning, the wounded ones are fighting again. One of them lost both legs and was still shooting from the ground. Another was missing an arm and used a rock to crush Commander Veth's skull. They will not stop. They will not stop. More days passed. The Rethic numbers dropped. Human numbers dropped too. But somehow, impossibly, the line held. On the 19th day, Rethic High Command received a message from the battlefield. Only 3 words: we are retreating. Rethkar did not believe it. He demanded to speak with his commanders directly. The communication that came back was from a young officer, barely more than a child by Rethic standards. High Commander, the young one said, I am the highest-ranking survivor. I am ordering retreat. What about our commanders? Our warriors? Dead, High Commander. All dead, the humans. They do not fight like other species. They do not know how to give up. They keep coming. They keep fighting. Even when they are dying, they crawl toward us and keep fighting. The young officer's voice cracked. We killed them. We killed so many of them. But they would not stop. Every time we broke through their lines, they closed the gap. Bodies piling up, and they used the bodies as walls. When they ran out of ammunition, they used their tools. Their hands. Their teeth. Silence for a long moment. What is wrong with them? The officer whispered. What kind of species refuses to die? The reinforcements arrived on the 20th day. They found the 215th Infantry Company still standing on their walls. Out of 800 soldiers, only 219 survived. They had held every inch of ground. Ambassador Chun Wei visited Rethkar 3 days later. The High Commander would not look at her. He would not speak of Prometheus III. He signed the surrender document without a word. As Chun Wei left, she paused at the door. She looked at the wall of skulls. High Commander, she said quietly. You wanted a human skull for your collection. Rethkar said nothing. We don't give up our dead, Chen Wei said. Not ever. Not even in defeat. We carry them home, no matter the cost. She turned to leave. That's the difference between us. You collect bones. We remember souls. And we fight for them even after they're gone. She walked out. Rethkar stared at his wall of trophies for a long time. They had never looked so meaningless. 1 year had passed since the Rethic surrender. The galaxy was different. Now no species challenged humanity directly. No empire threatened their borders. The great Titanic-class ships patrolled the void between stars, symbols of human power. But everyone who looked at those ships now understood something important. The ships were not what made humans dangerous. Kethvorin stood on the observation deck of the council station. He came here often now. He liked to watch the stars and think about everything that had changed. Behind him, the door opened. Admiral Maria Vasquez walked in. She was an older human with gray hair and dark eyes that had seen many battles. She commanded the Earth fleet stationed near the council station. She was also one of the few humans Kethvorin considered a friend. Ambassador, she said, nodding in greeting. You wanted to see me? Yes, Admiral. Thank you for coming. They stood together at the window. Outside, human ships moved through the darkness. The Titanic was visible in the distance, its massive form blocking out the stars behind it. I have a question, Kethvorin said. I have been thinking about it for many months. I hope you'll answer honestly. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. I'll try. Your people. Why are you the way you are? The Admiral was quiet for a moment. She looked out at the stars, her face thoughtful. That's a big question. I know. But I need to understand. Kethvorin turned to face her. I have seen your soldiers fight. I have seen them take wounds that would kill my people 3 times over. I have seen them refuse to retreat, refuse to surrender, refuse to die. I have seen them protect strangers with their own bodies. He paused. No other species does this. No other species can do this. Why? Vasquez took a deep breath. She seemed to be choosing her words carefully. We evolved on a death world, she said finally. I know the Council uses that term, but I'm not sure you truly understand what it means. Tell me. Earth has everything that wants to kill you. The weather changes constantly. Storms, floods, earthquakes, volcanoes. Half our planet is too hot to live comfortably. Large parts are too cold. The oceans are full of predators. The land is worse. She smiled slightly. For most of our history, we were not the top predator. We were prey. Soft, slow, weak prey. We had no claws, no shells, no armor, no venom. Nature did not make us dangerous. Then how did you survive? 2 things. Vasquez held up one finger. First, we learned to think, to plan, to build tools and weapons. We couldn't outfight a predator, so we outsmarted them. We set traps, made spears, invented fire. We used our minds to beat our enemies. She held up a second finger. Second, and more important, we learned to work together. One human alone is weak, but humans together can do anything. Kethvorin nodded slowly. He had seen this, the way human soldiers moved as one unit, the way they protected each other without thinking. Your bond with each other, he said, it is stronger than other species. Yes, because it had to be. Vasquez's eyes were distant, looking at something far away. A lone human in the wild would die, but a group of humans, a family, a tribe, we could protect each other, share food, care for the wounded, guard each other while sleeping. She turned to face Kethvorin directly. That's what the Council doesn't understand. Those soldiers at New Helsinki, Prometheus III, they weren't fighting for territory or resources. They weren't fighting for their government or their flag. They were fighting for each other, for the person standing next to them, for the families behind the walls. And that makes you fight harder? It makes us fight until there's nothing left. Vasquez's voice was soft but strong. I would die for my soldiers. Every single one of them would die for me. Not because we're ordered to. Not because it's our duty. Because we love each other. Because leaving someone behind is worse than death. Kethvorin was silent for a long moment. He thought about his own species. The Silith were logical, practical. They understood sacrifice for the greater good. But this was something different. Something deeper. Humans will do almost anything for strangers, he said slowly, remembering something Chun Wei had once told him. Yes, and absolutely anything for the ones they love. Vasquez nodded. Now you understand? Kethvorin looked out at the human fleet, at the great ships named after vessels from Earth's history. Titanic, Bismarck, Yamato. Why do you name your ships after tragedies? He asked. The original Titanic sank. Many of those other vessels were destroyed in your wars. Vasquez smiled. It was a sad smile, but also proud. Because to us, defeat is not an ending. It's a lesson. The Titanic taught us about arrogance, about preparing for the worst, about the importance of enough lifeboats. She pointed at the massive ship in the distance. We named our greatest vessel after our greatest failure. Because we never forget. We never stop learning. Every tragedy makes us stronger. Every loss makes us more determined. Kethvorin felt something cold move through him. That is terrifying. Yes, Vasquez agreed. It is. They stood in silence for a while. The stars turned slowly outside the window. We call them Titanic ships because we're proud of how far we've come, Vasquez said eventually. From wooden boats to starships in 10,000 years. That's our journey. Our story. She paused. But those ships? They're just metal and engines. Every species can build ships. What you can't build is what's inside them. The soldiers. The people. Vasquez's voice dropped to almost a whisper. What makes a human being pick up a rifle for a stranger? What makes a wounded soldier crawl toward the enemy instead of away? What makes a mother stand between danger and her children and refuse to move? She turned to look at Kethvorin. The ships carry us to the fight, Ambassador. But we are the weapon. We have always been the weapon. Long before we had starships. Long before we had guns. Since the first human picked up a rock to protect their family, we have been the weapon. Kethvorin understood then. He finally truly understood. The galaxy had spent centuries preparing for the wrong threat. They had built defenses against fleets and weapons. They had made plans to fight ships, but ships could be destroyed. Weapons could be taken. Armies could be defeated. You could not defeat what made humans dangerous. Because what made them dangerous was inside them. In their hearts. In their souls. In the bonds they formed with each other. Ambassador, Vasquez said, breaking the silence. Can I give you some advice? Please, be our friend. Not because you fear us, but because we're worth knowing. We're loyal. We're protective. We will fight and die for the people we care about." She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Humans make terrible enemies, but we make the best friends in the galaxy. We will stand beside you in the darkness. We will carry you when you cannot walk. We will hold the line when everyone else runs." Keth Voren looked at the human admiral, at this small, fragile-looking creature who represented the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever known. "I believe you," he said, and he did. The galaxy had changed. The old order was gone. But perhaps that was not a bad thing. Perhaps having humanity in the stars would make everyone safer, as long as no one was foolish enough to threaten what humans loved. Because those great Titanic ships would come, and inside them would be soldiers who did not know how to surrender, who did not know how to give up, who would fight until the stars themselves burned out. That was the human way, and the galaxy was finally beginning to understand.